Morning. Welcome. So we'll begin lying down. We'll need a few props. So I have a big long yoga bolster, but any kind of pillow or a rolled up quilt would do to work for that. Couch cushion, a couple of yoga blocks, whatever you've got handy. I have a blanket. This is mostly for comfort. So a blanket or some pillows or yoga blocks will do, but we are going to use a yoga strap. So if you have one of those, make sure it's kind of somewhere nearby so that you can, reach it lying down. That's going to be for the best. And then, along the way, any one of those props, block, blanket, pillow, might come in handy. You can use them whenever you think it's right. So we're going to do a butterfly pose. So I'm going to use my blanket to support my legs, and I'm going to use this pillow under my back. Now, if you don't have a pillow, you could put a yoga block down under your shoulder blades, and then another one or another pillow, something for head support. There's a little bit of an elevation to the chest, so that has a little sort of tones of a fish pose. And then I put the support underneath my thigh bones so that when I drop my legs open to this butterfly, there's a little sensation, but not too much. And I just fiddle with it until I like the amount of sensation. Now, my pillow is high enough that it creates a lift, but not so high that my elbows are off the ground. As long as my elbows are resting on the floor comfortably, it doesn't drag on my shoulders too much. So if it feels like it's too strong on the shoulders, you can either eliminate the pillow or the blocks underneath and just lie down, or you can add a little extra support under your elbows. So we'll take a few moments here. Probably stay for about 3 minutes. Just concentrating on the breath, and on every sort of exhale is another opportunity to let go of some tension, release any sort of, physical manifestations of stress or whatever we might be carrying around. Weariness. It's been a pandemic for a couple of years. Who knows what's kind of pent-up emotions might be wreaking havoc on our overall muscle tone and tension. So we'll try to let go so that we can surrender to this particular moment. Whatever stressors are in our lives, right this second while we're practicing yoga on the mat, they're probably not exactly here. We can probably let go of them for a moment at least. Give ourselves a little sort of recess or vacation from those worries and just focus on the body, the breath. And if that doesn't create a calm mental state all by itself, then we might also give ourselves permission to relax the mind a little bit, almost like instead of leaning forward into these little problem-solving front lobes of the brain, maybe we take a little attention back into the back of our brain, where the intuitive centers reside. Let's do like around 3 or 4 more breaths. going to start by just bringing my knees together and straightening out my legs. Sometimes it feels really nice to sort of wobble right there at the hip socket internally and externally. Do a little kind of release of any tension that may have developed there from holding the pose, hopefully not too much. And then I'm going to take this pillow out from underneath my back, or, you know, whatever you had under there. If anything, take that out. Now, depending on what object I had underneath my upper back, the blocks are quite firm. Even though, you know, they're made out of foam and they're a little squishy, but it's still a pretty firm surface. The pillow is sort of next in line. A blanket for me is the softest, but that area where we had that kind of right between the shoulder blades, or in that general area, we're going to reach the arms up and get the shoulder blades out of the way. And then I'm flexing my spine. So I'm hugging my abdominal muscles in so I can sort of press that upper back part of my, you know, right between the shoulder blades part of my back into the floor. And then as I rock side to side, I can kind of massage those muscles a little bit. That's an area where I tend to carry a little bit of stress and tension. Rolling onto one side, I can rotate the shoulder back and forth. And again, just kind of release that area, get a little more movement there where we had that sort of stable support. This for me does a couple things. So normally when I wake up in the morning, I'm a side sleeper, so this is probably why, but normally when I wake up in the morning, it feels like my shoulders want to permanently roll forward. I'm exaggerating that a little bit. It's not quite this bad, but it feels like it. And with that, just allowing the shoulders to kind of open over the pillow, there's a sense that my shoulders have broadened and that the shoulder blades themselves have kind of dropped back a little bit. So just notice if that's true for you. And then we'll do one more little movement pattern for that. So we'll reach up toward the ceiling to protract the shoulder blades and then retract them and hug them in. We'll do that a few times, just back and forth. So I'm trying to kind of get the movement going in the rhomboids, the kind of part of the trapezius. And you might even feel this, especially right as we're kind of squeezing the shoulder blades together, you might feel the muscle that lives on the inside of the shoulder blade, like between the shoulder blade and the upper back, upper part of the rib cage. All right. So retract your shoulder blades as best you can. Snuggle them as close to the center as possible. Grab your right arm with your left hand. Pull the arm to the left, but hold the shoulder blade in place. So this is an isometric release for that same area, the kind of subscapularis muscle that lives on the bottom of the shoulder blade, the rhomboids, the trapezius, and maybe some other things get in the mix as well. Muscles don't work like little individual cogs in a machine. They really are much more kind of cohesive, relational to the connective tissue movement. But, you know, sometimes it helps our brain to think about them separately. All right, I'm going to release that, give that arm a little shake, kind of moving the shoulder blade again in a kind of rhythmic way. And then snuggling them back together, I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Grab that left arm, bring it across, hold and steady with the shoulder blade, even though there's not much visually to this. It looks like we're just holding our arm. There's quite a little battle going on to keep for possession of the shoulder blade. How's that? I exert enough force. It even impacts my breathing patterns. So again, we're just isometrically, you know, giving those muscles a little blood flow, a little increased attention. And ultimately, when we let it go and give it a little rhythmic shake, some movement. Okay, so then just notice for yourself, like if you have a circumstance where you spend a lot of time over a computer or steering wheel, a sewing machine. I could, I can think of all kinds of professions like hairdressers and dentists and all kinds of folks, truck drivers, where the shoulders tend to lean forward. This is a really nice way to sort of release. So we did, with the pillow, we did a little bit of a release for the shoulder stabilizers that live in the front. Now we've done a release for the shoulder stabilizers that live in the back. And hopefully that the net result is that we have a nicer sort of more neutral feeling to how the shoulder blade lands on the back. Okay. So with all that, we'll do some more when we get to Cobra. We're going to go ahead and take this right leg and put that leg up on top of the left one. Now you can leave the left foot on the ground for this next part, or you can pull the legs in towards your chest. We're just going to rock back and forth. So if you like the feeling of the legs coming in, that for me that makes the intensity a little higher. If I bring my legs in towards me. This is a little more mild, but I still like it. And by that I mean just kind of in this hip area, this external rotator area, when we really strongly adduct the legs or bring them to the middle. There's a little more stretch in this kind of outer hip. So this just gives me a little bit more of a taste of that within a movement pattern. Okay, so I'm going to bring my right leg in. You can hold on to both legs. I'm going to leave my left leg out. And with this right leg, I'm going to do a little rock the baby. So now I'm not rocking on my hips. I'm just rocking this leg in the socket right here. So it's a contrast to the last movement where I was lifting the hips from side to side. Now I'm just moving the femur bone. Okay, I'm going to take my right hand and grab my right foot, and then bringing my foot up like I'm lunging upside down, I'm going to pull my knee a little to the floor so that my left side lifts off the ground a little bit, and then I'm going to extend the front of my left hip here. So mine doesn't extend very far. Some people can extend this leg so far back that they they can almost bring their leg up to their head behind them, right? I am not one of those people. I do not have that range of motion. But if you do, then your leg you'll feel more of a kind of backward movement in the thigh. Okay, so we're going to let that go and get our strap. And we'll put that around the ball of the right foot. You can have it lower in the arch of the foot if it feels better. I put mine right on the ball of my foot. That just gives me a little bit of opportunity to stretch my calves or not as I push on the sort of gas pedal with the ball of my foot. Okay, so hold on to the strap in whatever way works. I'm going to put mine behind my back so that I can mostly do this hands-free. And then experiment with how much stretch do I want in the back of my leg right now. Sometimes I start out with a little less, and then as I hold it, I'd add a little bit more. And you can bend and straighten the leg a few times, or rotate the leg at the hip socket. Both of those are interesting movement patterns. It's a way to kind of play with the stretch. So it doesn't have to be static, it can be a little bit dynamic. Not fidgety in the way that fidgeting is kind of a nervous, almost like a tick, but a sort of conscious, conscious fidgeting. Just a conscious movement pattern that gives you something to compare and contrast, like a range of sensation that you can dial up or dial down, depending on how it feels in the moment. So I'm feeling a little bit of stickiness in my calves this morning, so I'm playing with like just turning my foot, like a little bit like a pronated and a supinated kind of movement through my foot. just to kind of play with my calf muscles. 2 more breaths, give or take. And then we're going to take the leg out to the side. Now, if you have some space limitations, you can roll onto your side and stretch the leg up toward the ceiling. We just want to get to this inner thigh area. I put a little bit of support underneath my hips so that, 1, it stabilizes my pelvis, and 2, it just gives me a break, a stopping point. I have a lot of range of motion in this particular direction, and it can destabilize, so it gives me a little more stability. I'm also kind of pressing into the strap a little bit with my foot, and then I've got, a steady pressure on it from my shoulder. And holding on to it. And again, you can do some bending of the leg, straightening it, a little internal rotation or a little external rotation. You can play with that ankle movement, pointing, flexing, pronating, and supinating to see what that does for you. Those are big, fun words to say. Hopefully they make sense. Let me know. So we'll stay for like another 4 breaths or so, about 30 more seconds. Now, you can keep the strap and add a twist, or you can just do the leg coming across the body. That gets us kind of into some of the territory we started with. So I'm going to go for a full twist. I'm going to take the strap out. I'm going to wrap my top leg around my bottom leg just a little bit, and then drop them both over. It just gives me a little more of a spot to kind of drop them into. And then, because my chest muscles have felt a little tight today, I'm going to stretch out through my arm so I can pull on that pec major. I notice when I stretch my pec in particular, but anything in the front of the shoulder, sometimes this also, is that sometimes it will make me yawn. There's like a little bit of a response to that. And then it also, it can muck a little bit with my breathing rhythm. There's something about pulling against that breastbone that creates a little more, a little shock wave of stress through my breathing. So I'm consciously slowing down and deepening the breath for that reason. breath. And then I'm going to come back to the center. Ooh, as I take the pressure away from that. That chest muscle. That was more sensitive than I realized. All right, so you can do anything you like right here. Like you can just lay still. You can add a little rhythmic movement. I like a little bit of rhythm, a little bit of kind of a hips, a little bit of just kind of an over the whole body kind of movement. And then I like a little bit of stillness so I can feel, is the side that I just did all that stretching on any different than the side I haven't done yet? My right arm feels like it's about 3 inches longer than my left arm. Not quite so on the legs, but closer. Right leg is longer than the left leg. So it feels. I doubt they would measure differently. Okay, when you're ready, again, we're gonna cross one leg over there. This time the left leg is up on top and I'm just gonna wobble back and forth, but you can bring the knees in. So I am letting the hips shift off the ground here. So the movement is in my spine. And then as that happens, there might be some contrasting, that's not the right word, corresponding probably, sensations in the hips and legs or low back. More of those. For some reason, doing this side with my left leg on top, it pulls me down my mat. All right, I'm holding on to the left leg, stretching the right one out, and now I'm doing a little rock the baby movement, which is just the femur bone, well, the whole leg because it's all attached, but just right at that femoral acetabular joint right there at the hip. The hip socket. That's the regular way to say that. Although it's more fun to say femoral acetabular joint. Because there's a lot more syllables to make shapes with. All right, we're gonna give that lungy shape. So I'm pulling my left thigh down so I get a little bit of a lift here at the hip. That just gives me a little more room to extend out through the front of that hip. My attempts to do so make my voice change tone. And again, I am really fascinated by range of motion and how our joints themselves really prevent or create certain movement patterns. All right. My joints are tightly woven, people. Tightly woven. All right. I got my hamstring stretch on now. And again, I'm just going to play with it. So I've got just the barest hint of something happening to start with. And then I'm slowly going to kind of draw that leg into a little bit more stretch. Or at least a little bit more pressure. Feels like a stretch to me. But scientifically, that is potentially inaccurate. Yeah, the common parlance of our times. It's a stretch. Now, what's interesting to me, just in general, I love noticing differences. So on my right side, the calf muscles were really, really tight feeling. But my left calf muscles don't feel so tight. Like there's very little pressure there. And I'm curious about the difference between those two. Like why are the right calf muscles so much tighter than the left? And it might be that I need to pay attention to some postural habits I have. It could boil down to just simply, I've been driving an automatic transmission car for most of my life, so my right leg is just different and always will be. And then there's probably some territory in between those two conclusions that might be where the truth lies. We'll stay for about 30 more seconds. So with your next exhale, take the leg out to the side, dip in underneath the tropical plants. And again, we're going for this adductor area. This is a really deep muscle area, and it can be sensitive. So anywhere where muscles attach to bone, where we've got tendons, can be really sensitive, both to the stretch sensation and even to touch. So the inner thigh, this whole length of the inner part of the thigh bone, has a little bony ridge on it where a lot of muscle attaches. It's one of the largest attachment surfaces for muscles in the body. So there's a lot of potential sensation here, and some of that sensation might be really nice, but it's also a potential for really sensitive sensation. So you can certainly, like, I've put this little blanket underneath my hips so that it prevents me from overdoing a stretch here. You can certainly modify the stretch by rotating the leg a little bit or bending the knee a little bit, you know, depending on what area is where the sensitivity lies. There might be a different strategy. But again, you can lay on your side and position this leg so it goes straight up into the air, and then that gives you a different level of control for the stretch as well. Sensation anyway. So we'll hang out for maybe about another 30 seconds or so. Come on back to the center, and then I'm going to do the twist without the strap, but you can do it with. Again, for me, this is going to be more about focusing on the spine and my chest muscle, because I haven't really touched those areas as much. We've been working with the hips quite a bit. I'm now going to shift my focus. Ooh. A reclining twist is one of my favorite poses for a variety of reasons, but largely because of the kind of surface area that it can, that it impacts in a really sort of gentle and relaxed way. So this whole flank of my body is being impacted, and every muscle in this part of my back. So from the latissimus dorsi muscle that sort of starts down here at the hip, at the, kind of center part of the lower back, and comes all the way up to the back of my shoulder, to the teeny tiny little muscle that lives just between my hips and my ribs in my lower back that can be so sensitive. All of these muscles, like along the rib cage, the obliques, and then this amazing stretch that you can get through your chest muscle by just positioning the arm a little bit differently. That's delightful. And of course, there's all kinds of outer hip, which might be why we got in here in the first place, but everything else is like frosting and sprinkles. Ooh. to sneeze for a second. We'll do 2 more breaths. All right, I'm gonna slowly break myself out of that twist. This is strong. I went for the strongest chest muscle stretch of the week, really, so far. Oh, it was intense. All right, you can do a little moment of check-in, do a little bit of movement. We're essentially just gonna flip over so that we can do some work with some cobra and sphinx. Oh. Now, for some folks, the extension at the knee is a little problematic, so you can bend the knees so that your feet come up. You know, you can just tuck the toes under. That might be enough of a bend. Or you can bend them, you know, towards a 90-degree angle. And still lift into cobra. It's sort of like a little scorpion, a scorpion shape more than maybe a cobra shape, but, you know, they're both desert creatures. So they work. They're in the same general climate. We can keep them together. All right, we're gonna roll the shoulders. So I've got my hands placed pretty high for this first round, up by my chin. And essentially, I'm just getting as much movement as I can within this shape. Keeping my palms there, I'm going to lift into cobra. So I'm using my back muscles to do that. And then I'm just going to shift one shoulder forward and then the other, sort of liquefying this cobra, looking over the shoulder. Okay, and then come on back down. Sliding the hands back a little bit. So now they're, you know, a little more lined up with maybe my chest muscles or breastbone. Again, I'm going to sort of move the upper back in some sort of rhythmic, sweeping circles. Feels like a circle. And then lifting into cobra. And again, I'm going to kind of liquefy this, bringing one shoulder forward and the other one back. Just sort of rhythmically. Okay. Now, I'm going to come to a sphinx. So I'm going to lift into my cobra and then place my elbows right about where that cobra wants to hang out. So I'm not being too pushy on my lower back. I'm basically just taking up the slack created by lifting myself and putting my elbows on the floor. Now, I like my elbows closer together than my shoulders are wide by just a little bit. And then a little bit forward of the shoulders. That gives me the most kind of easygoing placement. It doesn't feel like my shoulders are being jerked up towards my ears or overly depressed. It's like just the perfect neutral. And then I'm just going to hang out there and try to relax a little bit. I'm stretching out through my legs a little bit more, but then kind of letting go, if possible, through the glutes. My glutes like to be on guard anytime I'm in a back bend. So mostly I'm trying to let gravity and time unwind my hip flexors and my lower back. Now, this feels compressive in your lower back. You can certainly reach out through the legs and use the glutes to help mitigate some of that, or lower the pose a bit. Ooh, a little crocodile where you just rest your forehead on your crossed arms might be the perfect amount. Let's do 3 more breaths. All right. Now, I'm going to come to a seated position. But before I get there, I'm going to do these little like windshield wipers with my legs, a little child's pose. You might want to do some cat cows. That might be good. Maybe I'll throw those in too. Sometimes I feel like, these poses are so predictable, but gosh, they're so nice. Got this, like, I can change it up by putting my elbows on the floor or putting blocks under my hands. That makes it a little different. Gives it a little different flavor. Oh. Now I'm gonna start with a simple cross-legged setup, and then I'm gonna potentially add on. So I've got a blanket, I've got a block, just in case. It's possible that just sitting cross-legged is gonna be enough fun for my hips and my low back that I don't need to add on to it. I'm gonna start with that, then see what happens if I bring this leg up on top. Stabilize that. And then we're gonna add a twist. So this leg that's up on top is my left leg. So I'm gonna turn to my left and use that left knee as a kind of hold for my right hand. Now, generally speaking, like this is the same thing as a reclining twist, right? But it feels so different when you change the relationship to gravity. One more breath here. Now coming out of the twist, I'm going to give it just a moment. And then I'm gonna side bend. So I'm side bending over to my right, which makes my left hip want to lift off the ground. So I'm trying to remain as stable as I can. Now some people will be able to put their elbow on the floor. That's too far for me. So I've got my hand there to support me. It's just fine. I'm just trying to soften places that feel a little bit spicy, like my lower back. See if I can soften there a little bit, not fight so hard. I might have to back off a notch. Keeping my hips and legs as steady and stable as I can. I'm almost sort of squeezing them together a little bit. Keep myself stable. 2 more breaths. Come up, and I'm gonna let this go. I love there's just kind of feeling of this, almost it's cascade is usually something that moves from the top down. For me, this moves from the bottom up, like from my lower back up to the crown of my head. There's this kind of release of tension as I kind of settle out of that shape. Now, I've taken that leg that was on the top, which is my left leg, and made that a straight leg right out in front. I left the right one as it was. You can pull it in tighter if you like, and then I'm folding toward that leg. Coming back to this hamstring stretchy shape. Now I'm kind of holding onto my big toe and pushing, like I'm pushing on the gas pedal with that. And then I'm trying to take my little toes and spread them out. It just gives my arch a little bit of kind of a sensation, a little activation. My toes don't move much, but I'm trying. It's not the result as much as it is the effort, right? Isn't that true of life? At least the Bhagavad Gita would have us think so. let go when you're ready. Give your legs a little jiggle. We're gonna sit cross-legged the other direction, and that all by itself might create some, I definitely have one way of sitting cross-legged that's more habitual than the other. So I need sometimes a little extra support under a knee. So this might be enough. If you want, you can try that leg up on top, see how that goes. And then we're gonna add a twist. So this is my right leg, so I'm turning to my right. I'm going to come out of the twist, give it just a second to settle, and then add the side bend here. And again, this wants to pick my hip up, so I'm kind of giving myself a little anchor and pressing my legs towards each other to anchor my hip down. And then letting the other part, my upper body, be as sort of relaxed as possible with this stretch. Releasing tension, softening tension from the side bend. About 3 more breaths. Come up with an inhale. I'm going to release the shape. Give everything a little shimmy, a little movement. I'm just waiting for the sense of my back being in an unusual sort of asymmetrical shape. So once it feels like it's about even on both sides, left and right hemispheres, anyway, muscles on either of those sides, then I'm going to fold forward. And again, so I'm holding onto my big toe, pushing into my fingers a little bit, and then spreading out my little toes to the degree that I can. This is just, my choice for today. I don't make this choice every single time. It feels like it sort of widens the arches of my foot as I'm doing that. Do one more breath. I will release all the pressure. I'm going to shake out both my legs to start with. I'm going to sit on the edge of my blanket. So my sit bones are right on the edge, and then when I come to a cross-legged position, it feels a little bit like my knees are lower than my hips. And this is where we'll end with a little meditation, just kind of, once again, it's more mindfulness, I suppose, just getting really present for the body and how there might be maybe a change in this overall sense of the body. Sometimes when we first sit down to do practice, everything feels creaky. Like maybe it feels a little less creaky. Maybe there's just a little more presence, a little more warmth. Maybe all of the above, maybe none of that. Just notice. Now we're going to do this 5 times. It's a kind of shamanic breath technique. We're going to inhale really forcefully, and then as the exhale is ready to come, we're just going to relax, almost sigh the exhale out. So if you can breathe through your nose, inhale through your nose. If you can't, kind of, make a little O shape with your lips and inhale that way. Big, strong inhale, and then with the exhale, just relax out. One more. And then let yourself hang out in this sort of no breath space for a bit. And of course, take a breath when it's time. Thank you for joining me for some gentle yoga. Have a great rest of your day. Namaste.